This week's episode of Millions of Screens is sponsored by HBO Max's The Flight Attendant, nominated for 9 Emmys, including Outstanding Comedy Series and Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series for Kaylee Cuoco. Stream now on HBO Max. Hello and welcome to Millions of Screens. I'm creative producer Leo Garcia, joined as always via Zoom by TV awards editor Libby Hill and TV deputy editor Ben Travers. On today's show, we're talking about some renewals, or I guess one renewal, one premiere, and one finale, before dipping our toes into the Emmys and talking about the comedy category writ large.
Leo, look at you. We putting that together. Like, we just were brainstorming, trying to settle on the topics we were going to get into, and then you crafted this eloquent opening that made it look like we'd planned this out with poetic intentions.
I did not.
Thank you. Great job.
That was off the dome.
This is millions and millions of little screens.
Can't you shut up? I'm busy. Boy, what a great show.
Skipping ahead to the clicker, our recap of the biggest news items from this past week. Guys, just this morning, the news hit the wire, the indie wire, that HBO will be renewing The White Lotus for a second season. Although, as most people figured, it'll be a new location, a new cast. Mike White joked that it could be White Lotus Saint-Tropez, which I think is how you pronounce that.
Saint-Tropez? I don't know.
Is it Saint-Tropez? That's what I was worried about. Is it a silent Z?
I feel like I've heard somebody say Saint-Tropez, but I
that sounds
don't
right.
know. I don't
That
know.
sounds right. I just didn't think of the White Lotus as a chain, but I guess it would be.
I also did not think of it as a chain, but I love thinking of it as a chain now.
Yes.
Obviously am very enthusiastic about this news. I think it's great. I'm very excited for them to do it. But yeah, like even just kind of opening it up like that to that little bit of an extreme to be like, oh yeah, this isn't just an isolated incident. This is very specific to the Hawaiian resort in season 1, but this is obviously something that goes on in many, many places. So seeing Mike White's brand, which everyone on this podcast loves, applied to new locales will be great. And he mentioned before the news broke, he'd done interviews and he'd mentioned like that he'd be open to this, that it was, that extending the series was something that he'd be okay with. And I think he said something about that he would, maybe like to welcome back some familiar faces, like if we can, if it's doable and fits or whatever. So
I have the
maybe.
quote here. The quote is, I don't think you can credibly have all the season 1 guests on the same vacation again, but maybe it could be a Marvel Universe thing, where some of them would come back. We only made 1-year deal with the actors, so we'd have to find out who is even available. I like both ideas. Granted, I have not seen the finale. I don't know what happens in the finale, but I like either the idea of returning to the White Lotus Hotel in Hawaii with a brand new cast of people staying there, but I also like the idea of following some of the vacationers on another vacation at a different White Lotus resort after whatever transpires in the finale.
That old phrase, you need a vacation from your vacation, that's going to apply for at least somebody here, so...
I don't know if a loved one or even a stranger died at a Holiday Inn Express I was at. I don't know if I'd stay at another Holiday Inn Express for a while. And that's the level of hotel I am staying at. Doubletree? Is that still a thing? Courtyard by Marriott.
Yeah, that's what I hope. Like, that's the show I would want to see. I want to see a family of 5 jammed into a single room at Courtyard by Marriott. I want them to have to fight to get a cot. Those are the stories I'm interested in. Those are the stories that appeal to me.
Well, up top, we announced the renewal, and that was what we just talked about, the White Lotus, but there is a premiere, or I guess it has premiered.
Yes.
On Monday, Libby, Reservation Dogs. We talked a little bit about this last week, but I wanted you to be able to expound upon it on the series from FX.
Yes. So Reservation Dogs is from Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi, who are both Indigenous men. In fact, the staff is, I think, completely the writing staff is completely Indigenous. It's about 4 teenagers in Oklahoma growing up on the reservation and trying to save up money to move to California. I love this series. I've watched the first 4 episodes. It feels very of a piece with a lot of those FX comedies that you love, like Atlanta and Atlanta, but that are giving you a slice, that are giving you a window into a hyper specific world that many of us aren't, have never had before. I am particularly susceptible to this, having grown up in South Dakota. There are a lot of reservations there, and it is a different world. And you see a lot of upsetting things there. I had heard feedback before the show premiered that some critics struggled with the dark humor on the show, and that just tells me you've never been to a reservation and you don't care to know about the struggles of indigenous people in the United States. So there are these four teens, and they're so lovely and sweet, and they think they're tough. And I don't know. It's definitely a coming of age story, but it feels a little bit like a coming of age story where you aren't really able to come of age because your options are so limited. The central characters are Alora and Bear and Cheese and Willie Jack. 2 girls, 2 guys, and they end up accidentally, unintentionally forming a gang, which is how they are trying to make their money. It's really great. And in the premiere, it's the 1-year anniversary of the loss of one of their friends. And it is a very emotional moment. They are remembering him. And I think, and let me say this, I've watched the first 4 episodes. I still don't know what happened to their friend, but I can tell you what I suspect happened to their friend. And if that were true, I really think the show is committed to examining those hyper-specific struggles that are taking place all around us that we aren't talking about. I know that was very, very vague, but the way that the show manages to marry potential hopelessness and humor is beautiful and lovely, and it doesn't look like anything else on TV. So I would encourage you to at least check it out. It's obviously a half-hour comedy. It was up on Hulu before it even premiered on FX. So check it out. Reservation Dogs airs on Mondays. You'll like it. I promise. I don't promise. I can't promise that.
And just to follow up, you're right, Libby. Every writer, director, and series regular on the show is Indigenous. And I want to say they even tried to make sure some of the craftspeople and crew were additionally.
Almost certainly.
Closing out the clicker, Ben, the finale for Dave, Lil Dicky's showcase, the season finale aired yesterday. What can you tell us about Dave without spoiling it for people who haven't watched? But you really enjoyed this second season, even if it changed the formula of what Dave might be.
Yeah, I don't remember if I talked about this when the show first premiered. And Leo, I believe you're referring to yourself when you asked for people not to be spoiled, for me not to spoil anything for potential soon to be season 2 Lil Dicky watchers.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I've been very impressed this year with kind of how they've addressed a topic that was definitely elevated and acknowledged in the first season, which is the idea that Lil Dicky, that Dave is existing in a world that was like, he's making his money off of an art form that was, created and owned and everything done by Black artists. And he's acknowledged very, bluntly, even in season 2, that a lot of white rappers are able to make a lot of money and a lot of noise and, just kind of quickly elevate themselves to the top of the pack because they're white, because they're like the anomaly. And a lot of the audience for this music is white. So they're, just ready to key right in. And they've kind of tied a lot of that together in season 2 with his struggle to produce music. He at the end of season 1, he was finally hired on by a label. He was supposed to be, releasing his debut album. And when the season started, He didn't have anything done. He was trying to shoot a music video that was a K-pop music video, and he only was making it because he knew that K-pop was really big right now, and if he could just get a K-pop star in the video, then he knows he'll be really big, and like the record will do well, and everyone will be happy, and he won't be a failure. But that doesn't go according to plan. A lot of the rest of the stuff that he's trying to do is blocked. Like he can't figure out exactly what it is. One of the things that also gets lumped into this is that actually that's a spoiler for Leo, so I won't get into it. But there are easy paths that they could have taken as to explain and then course correct for Dave's inability to produce. And instead, in season 2, they've really tried to not only force him to see what he's kind of taking advantage of and the privilege that he has and the like kind of selfish or at least singular focus that he has when it comes to becoming a star, but they've also found a really, really clever way repeatedly and across the board to include new perspectives. And one of the things that stood out in the first season of Dave was the Gator episode where you kind of followed Gator, his hype man, for an entire half hour, and you got to kind of see what his life was like outside of Dave and with Dave. And it was a really kind of emotional episode as well as all these other things. And we've seen that so many times. Like we've seen so many TV shows just kind of take a break from their central white protagonist to, go off and try to expand the perspective. And some of them are great. Some of them feel like pandering. The Dave one was very good. But in season 2, they've managed to kind of shift Dave's control of the episode. Like he stays in the episode, but the supporting character that they want to talk about is the one that really becomes the focal point, even though the star of the show is still front and center. And the way that they do that to elevate like his privilege and elevate kind of, everything that he's taking for granted makes it such a sharp satire, but sharp commentary on kind of how we see the world in general, like how the kind of white male gaze like just dominates everything. And they just kind of keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it in very enriching ways without, stepping too far away from the story or without it feeling like a reach or without it even including that many more people than we acknowledged and got to know in the first season. Like it's just deepening our relationship with them by letting them kind of, portray this world that they're living in as well. They're not just sidekicks. They're not just supporting characters. But it's also much more than that. So I've been really impressed with season 2 of Dave. The finale aired Wednesday night. It's available on FX on Hulu, aka it's available on Hulu. I really encourage everybody to give it a shot if you haven't yet. I'll have more on the site, hopefully Thursday, about the finale. But yeah, it's great.
I will say I do want to catch up with Dave. I think we talked about this off pod, but I think my struggles with Dave and Lil Dicky have always been that, he is someone who is simultaneously trying to do the thing while satirizing it, while culturally appropriating it. And like that is such a weird juggling and balancing act that like I just feel that like sometimes it grosses me out, like satirizing the form that isn't yours. But I do look forward to potentially like seeing, him come to like forced to look at that via the vehicle. What a great thing FX has allowed him to do this over the course of 2 seasons.
Well, it's also
to come to grips with what he does.
Like he will, and in the series, and they I mean, this is something that's obviously being addressed, but he's still adamant that he's not satirizing any sort of music. Like he's not trying to be the funny rapper. He really struggles with like people who label him as just, you're gonna make some jokes, you're like a comedian who also can rap. He's like, no, I'm a very good rapper. And season 2, you can kind of see how that ego gets in the way of him just accepting who he is. So like there is this weird blend of everything you said. The show is able to take the broader perspective and acknowledge all of that. and show that to the audience in a way that sometimes it feels like Dave is completely unable to see. And then at the same time, it also allows you to invest on Dave's part of the journey where you're like, I do kind of like he does have talent. Like he does have skill. He does work at this. And I want him to succeed. I just also want him to be aware of why he's succeeding and try to do something about it, especially with the people who are surrounding him who've helped him so much and he doesn't necessarily appreciate them. So, yeah, it's pretty wild. I think I would have had a hard time listening to Dave's music without the show. I think I didn't really know who he was before I started watching it. So, but your impression, what you're saying about him, is exactly what I would have heard. So,
I hear all that, Ben, but it's also tough to swallow because the single that broke him out was "Save That Money," where he did $sign where the S is, and he did DAT as that. So he is clearly usurping the language of hip hop throughout, and then twisting it on being like, I'm a Jewish guy, so I don't spend that money. I save that money. And then the entire rap is essentially jokes about saving money. And the video is using the tropes of rap videos, but like in a comic way. As like, we don't have money, but I still want big cars and naked girls and a boat. And I need all this stuff. So like, it's tough to like, early Lil Dicky knew exactly what he was doing. And maybe 2021 Lil Dicky is now coming to terms with like, but I am also a good rapper, and I don't doubt that he is. I think he probably is a very good rapper.
I actually think that that's a great example of kind of the line that they dance around in the show, because he acknowledges very much that that's absolutely like his brand. Like that is what he's going after. The idea that he knows what he's doing, like as thoroughly as you are seeing it, I don't know if that part of it is true. And I don't know if he like that. I don't know if he knew that that part of it was true. I think he knew that there was he wasn't able to identify with the people and the music and everything in that way, like that he would want to spend all that money and that he'd be frivolous about it. I think he just saw that there was a joke there. And now it's asking him to look at the perspective of like, okay, but why are you able to do that? Like, why are you able to make that joke? Why is that joke funny? Let's take it to the next level and try to break it down to acknowledge the privilege that's inherent to it. I think before, I don't think he did that. I think he just was like, I just think it's funny because they say this and I can say this and that'll be good. Like nobody's doing that. So I think now they're working toward that. But that's a great interview for someone to have with Lil Dicky himself to fully understand how much of this.
5 weeks and 3 days away from the Emmys, and we wanted to start by talking about sort of each category and sort of advocating for some, or not each category, but sort of each section, I would guess. How would you describe comedy, limited series, drama?
Genre.
The
limited series isn't really a genre, so it's still iffy.
Well, we wanted to start by talking about comedy, and I think for the most part, everyone thinks comedy is essentially a done deal, with a potential exception of supporting actor. Is Keenan it's a lock there?
I don't think he is.
And not that any of the other ones are locks. Obviously, the Ted Lasso behemoth and the Gene Smart naissance. But essentially, we want to take this time to potentially advocate for some of the other shows and talent that we think people should give a second look to make sure, when you do fill out your ballots, hey, remember XYZ and why this person was good in said show. So Libby, why don't you start and note that you don't have to talk about the big 5 categories. You could talk about anything in the comedy space.
Well, yeah, I think, not to put the cart ahead of the horse, final Emmy voting hasn't even opened yet. That's for next week, next week.
But hopefully people are thinking about it. People are thinking about it. People are planning out meticulously, going through, making sure they've seen the nominees, making sure they're making informed decisions. I know. So let's talk about comedy. It feels like Ted Lasso probably has series wrapped up with Hacks as a strong challenger. I can't imagine a world where Jason Sudeikis does not win lead actor. I'm nearly as confident with Gene Smart and lead actress. The supportings have a little more wiggle room. The Battle of the Hannahs?
There is the Battle of the Hannahs. There's the battle of every goddamn person on Ted Lasso over in supporting.
That has to split the vote, right? There's no way having 4 actors from the same. That seems.
I would say, with no spoilers, I would say that the episodes of Ted Lasso that are airing right now would make a really strong case retroactively for Brett Goldstein, even if people didn't feel as strongly about season 1. That's my gut right now. You'll hear a lot of people talking about Keenan. Keenan for SNL, which maybe
feels like a career feels like a career achievement award. Because I would argue that Bowen Yang has more quote unquote heat right now of the two SNL performers.
That's I feel the same way. So it's curious, but what I want to do is I want to pull back a little further and focus on some other categories, specifically comedy writing. In comedy writing, you have the pilots of The Flight Attendant, you have the pilot of Girls Five Eva, you have the pilot of Hacks, you have the pilot of Ted Lasso, and you also have another Ted Lasso episode, which is arguably one of the best episodes of season 1, Make Rebecca Great Again, which is great. But I'm going to spend my time right now stumping for a different non-pilot episode, which is Play from Pen15. Now, Pen15 got a comedy series nod this year. That was huge for them, and it's unfortunate that it's coming in a year where that category seems to be pretty locked down. But this is their second nomination. People respect what is happening on Pen15. They respect the scripts that are coming out of it, and it's a show that deserves all the love in the world. Play was a fascinating, weird standout episode centered around a school play that is perfectly in line with Pen15's Pen15's vibe, and was written actually by Maya Erskine. Yeah, is obviously one of the show's co-creators. Just consider it, check it out. Check out its weirdness, because I think it's bringing a very different energy than a lot of these shows in this category. And you know what? While we're talking about Pen15, I don't know where we would pick up this category, but if any show deserves a casting Emmy, it's that show. I don't know how you find that many adolescent kids who are fine acting opposite grown women who are playing adolescent kids, and every single actor that they've discovered is a little marvel.
I want to double down on the Pen15 casting. I'm not even sure who else is in that category. You got Hacks, Ted Lasso, Flight Attendant, and Kaminsky Method. But like, even as someone who is not the strongest fan of Pen15, the job they do at casting the children who act opposite Anna and Maya is incredible.
Well, the one of the things I wanted to raise was kind of related to that casting idea, and I mean, I think in the spirit of our kind of advocacy this week, rather than just sitting here and telling you what's going to win, I think the casting category is a good kind of reminder of why it's not always about who wins. It's just kind of recognizing the work that goes into doing this. And I think you guys are completely right. When you look at something like Pen15, when Melissa is faced with pulling in the children to fit in with these adult writers, directors, like, who have this very specific vision of what their show is going to be, what the comedy is going to be within the show, the beats they're going to hit, the attitudes they're going to carry, that's a very specific challenge. That's something that I think if you take the time to think about it, just to that degree, you should be able to appreciate the work that went into it, which is why it was so exciting to see it get nominated. Shifting back to the predictions a little bit, casting in a comedy typically ends up going with the comedy series winner. So we've seen last year Schitt's Creek won, the year before that it was Fleabag, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and 2 years of Veep. And I'm not going to have a huge problem with Ted Lasso winning this category, because one of the things you also have to consider is they didn't have the same challenge that Pen15 had, but they're still starting a comedy series from scratch. It is very ensemble driven. They're trying to bring in people who are both convincing as actors, obviously within their characters outside of the field, and athletes when they're on the field, as well as owners, and like everything that's specific to that idea of casting. They have to look far and wide, and they really found people who could connect with each other, who could connect with the vibe, and who obviously resonated with audiences. So that whole category is amazing, and I think you could make the same argument for Hacks. Like, there's a reason that so many of those actors ended up getting nominated, whether it was Carl Clemens Hopkins or who was the guest actress who got nominated for Hacks. It was her first nomination.
It was Jane Addams.
Yeah, Jane Addams. I think kind of their nomination speaks to this very interesting task set before them, where it's like you've got this weird Las Vegas reality that you have to kind of create around Gene Smart's character. You have to be able to build that out. And then you also have to have people who are very, very associated with kind of an LA mentality, to circle around Hannah a little bit. But you've also got her family, and you've got just, characters who are characters who can exist and fill that space and make it really exciting and really funny for, the entirety of the episode, for that whole thing. Like, they have to be able to carry it in specific moments. And I think they really did. And I think that's why so many of them ended up getting nominated, which was exciting. So I love the casting category. And I think it's a great embodiment of where we're at right now, like as like us as a group, where it's like, let's just try to talk about some of the things we like and are excited about, to appreciate the work that went into it. Because I'm sure in like 3 weeks, I'll be screaming about, this thing has to win or the world will end, and I'll murder everyone. So
no, Ben,
let's be
you're
peaceful for now.
You're a glass half full guy now. You're a half full
guy.
Positive.
Positivity,
Total
buddy.
positivity. Just wait till we talk about drama, then you're gonna hear the fun stuff.
Also, if I can just add again, after Libby talked about the Pen15, Ben is also right about Ted Lasso. I mean, the fact that they have 7 actors in the 4 main categories nominated, and that doesn't include Tahib Jamoh, who could probably make an argument for being in the supporting actor race himself, and may make that noise in season 2.
Ben, that you want to pick up and complain about.
Is Be Positive going to win for directing in a comedy?
No, but I am curious about the comedy directing categories, mainly because there's always talk of a preference being given to something that's hour long when you're competing in these categories against shows that are typically a half hour long. So some people are ready to kind of favor the Flight Attendant in that category, directed by Susanna Fogel, I believe. Yes, Susanna Fogel.
You bet.
And it's another category where you've got three Ted Lasso nominees in there. You also have 2 kind of classic sitcoms from James Widows and James Burrows, Mom and Be Positive, respectively. And then you've got Hacks, which, I think we're all very excited. Would love to see kind of Hacks sneak away with this thing. But it's one category that I don't really know what to predict. I love the work of everybody within it. They've all done exceptional jobs with what they've been given. We've been lucky enough to talk to Sudeikis about some of the stuff that he worked with these directors on for Ted Lasso, and he appreciates their contributions very specifically. So it's nice to see specific people honored. But I'm not sold on Flight Attendant actually winning it. I don't know if it's going to be vote splitting and that'll hurt Ted Lasso, but I wouldn't be too surprised if Hacks was able to steal this one, and that would make me very happy. I honestly am just looking for ways for Hacks to kind of get more than Gene Smart. I think that there was, obviously with 15 total nominations and, plenty of creative arts categories in play, it could, get its fair share of wins, so to speak. But the nominations alone kind of point to the fact that people respect this show beyond, the star. And at the same time, it's like, I'd love to see it win a couple and, almost make that Succession-esque first season move of just stealing a couple key little categories and be like, yeah, that feels good. That feels right. That's a good one. They deserve it. And, Lucia is one that definitely would for directing. So,
yeah, I will say, like, it's very, I think to myself, it has 15 nominations. Obviously the Academy's into it. And then I think about Ozark.
Millions of Screens is a production of Penske Media Corporation IndieWire. Our theme music features excerpts of the classic YouTube video Bjork Talking About TV and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Our editor-in-chief is Dana Harris-Bryson. Our publisher is James Israel. And the search for our executive editor goes on. The top 3 performing Lil Dicky songs on Spotify are Freaky Friday, featuring Chris Brown, which has 556 million streams. Yes, that Chris Brown, Libby. Save That Money. The aforementioned Save That Money with a $ in the S and a DAT for that.
Money.
Featuring Fetty Wap. And then Earth, which has 170 million streams. Millions of Screens strongly endorses watching the music video for Pillow Talk, featuring Brain. Now, Brain, I think, is just Lil Dicky, but there is in the video a Brain. I might be wrong about that. It is a very good music video. It's directed by Tony Ascenda, who did American Vandal and a lot of Funny or Die stuff. But yeah, I strongly recommend watching the music video for Pillow Talk.
Yeah, it's 11 minutes long.
Very confusing. All of that. All of the things you just said, Leo, were very confusing to me.
You can find us on Twitter at A Million Screens, at Midwest Spitfire, at Ben T. Travers, and at Leon Garcia. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, so leave a review and let us know what you think. This has been Libby and Leo. Remind you as always that you shouldn't let poets lie to you.
You shouldn't let poets lie to you.
Ain't nothing wrong with a couple of cold brews and a cool podcast.